This is a gripping revenge story with a rating over 98 points. You'll want to read it all in one go. And now, let's start the story. My best friend always liked to use me, acting generous on my behalf at the expense of others. Out of gratitude for her saving my mom's life, I couldn't say no to anything she asked. One day, she asked me for a ride after work. Thinking it was on my way, I agreed. But what I didn't expect was that she brought along several of her co-workers, expecting me to drop each one of them off at their homes. She was hailed as a saint by her colleagues, and I was left feeling unsettled. Another time, a mutual friend of ours needed to borrow money after his business failed. She generously volunteered, but in the end, I was the one who ended up giving away $20,000. Not long after, the friend disappeared, avoiding all responsibility, while she maintained her good reputation. When her cousin needed a place to stay after giving birth, she moved them into my apartment without even asking. Not only did they wreck the place, but they also had the audacity to plan for a second child there. When I refused, they spread nasty rumors about me, calling me a cheapskate. One day, she once again hitched a ride with me, along with her colleagues. But this time, tragedy struck. A car, driven by a drunk driver, crashed into us, leaving everyone injured. One co-worker even lost her unborn child. Still recovering from my own injuries, I was dragged to a construction site by that co-worker's husband and crushed to death under a steamroller. After my death, I overheard my so-called best friend say, "Ashley really thought I saved her mom's life. What a fool. She died for nothing." The next time I opened my eyes, I had returned to the day when she first asked for that ride. Hee, I'm so tired today. Since it's on your way, can you drop me off? Her sweet, lilting voice, now all too familiar, rang in my ears. Dazed, I looked around. The excruciating pain from the steamroller vanished in an instant. My hands, whole and unharmed, were once again gripping the steering wheel. Looking up at the rearview mirror, I saw my intact reflection staring back at me. I had been reborn, and this was the very day when the tragedy of my previous life had begun. Her name was Amanda, and today she wanted to hitch a ride, claiming she was exhausted from work. What a joke! All she ever did at the office was gossip and slack off, yet she complained about being tired. But since it was on my way, I let her in the car. What I didn't know was that the moment I agreed, Amanda would wave her hand and invite all her co-workers into my car. Come on in, everyone. Today I'll give you all a ride home. It's so tiring to take the subway. This SUV is spacious, there's even room for your bags, and I'll drop you off right at your door, she said. Her co-workers, chuckling and grinning, piled into my car one by one. I was completely baffled, but Amanda smiled with such innocent sweetness, which immediately brought back memories of my previous life. It was from this exact moment that everything began to spiral out of control. That evening, we had a college reunion. Amanda and I had been classmates in college, so naturally, she was attending. However, she didn't want to ride her small scooter, claiming it would be embarrassing. So, she insisted on taking my car. At first, I thought I'd just be giving her a ride to the reunion, but instead, I found myself driving her colleagues to their homes one by one. They lived all over the city, men and women alike. By the time I finished dropping them off, Amanda was praised as being so generous and helpful, while I ended up being late to the reunion and was forced to drink 3 penalty shots as a result. I was already tipsy, and I thought the reunion would be a simple gathering with old friends, reminiscing over food and drinks. But to my surprise, one of our classmates, Mike, who had always talked about starting his own business, suddenly asked to borrow money. "I'm in deep trouble right now," he said. "Creditors are calling and texting me non-stop, and I can't sleep at night. We all grew up together, and I know we're all friends here. If any of you can help me out, I'd be forever grateful." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that failed businesses usually came with large debts, and none of us were in a position to lend money easily. Some of us had even started families. Amanda suddenly broke the awkward silence. "How much do you need, Mike?" she asked, pretending to check her wallet. "Let me see if I have enough." Mike's eyes lit up with hope. "I knew I could count on you. Everyone else has already helped, and now I just need $20,000 to settle everything." Amanda waved dismissively as if it was nothing. 10 or $20,000. That's no big deal. It's not worth losing sleep over. But I didn't bring my checkbook. And there's not that much in my bank account right now. Hey, Ashley, why don't you transfer the money to him for me? I'll get it back to you when I visit the bank. By that point, I was already hazy from the alcohol, and Amanda's earnest gaze made me think back to a few days earlier when my mom, who had come to visit from our hometown, collapsed from a heart attack while waiting for me after work. I rushed to the hospital and found Amanda by my mom's bedside. The doctors said if it hadn't been for Amanda's quick CPR, my mom wouldn't have made it. Tears of gratitude filled my eyes as I gripped Amanda's hand, thanking her profusely. She had smiled at me, bright as the sun, and said, "Your mom is my mom. It's nothing." Amanda smiled at me now, with the same warm, reassuring expression. So, I didn't refuse. I transferred the $20,000 to Mike. He was so overwhelmed with gratitude that he nearly cried, hugging Amanda and saying, "I love you." Amanda patted his back, laughing. "We're all good friends here. Helping each other out is just the right thing to do." All the other classmates praised Amanda for being so generous. But 2 weeks passed, and Amanda never mentioned the money. It was as if she'd forgotten about it entirely. I tried to contact Mike, but he was nowhere to be found. When I cautiously brought it up with Amanda, she brushed me off, saying, "Mike borrowed the money, not me. If you want it back, you should be talking to him. Why are you coming to me?" I told her I couldn't reach Mike, but she flat out denied ever promising to pay me back. I asked other classmates, but no one knew where Mike had gone. It wasn't until I saw his name on a debtor's list that I realized he'd run off, and I'd never see that money again. As I came back to my senses, Amanda tapped on my window with her finger. "Hee, why aren't you paying attention to me?" Knowing that this was the start of the tragedy from my past life, I rolled up the window and hit the gas, driving off without a word. Amanda stood behind me, jumping up and down, waving her arms, calling out for me. Her figure grew smaller and smaller until she finally disappeared from sight. I drove straight to the class reunion, and not long after, Amanda arrived too. The moment she walked in, she frowned and pouted at me. "Ashley, why didn't you wait for me? I found a seat far from both Mike and Amanda. You and that electric scooter of yours. If I'd waited, I'd have been blocking traffic." Amanda's face immediately changed. She hadn't expected me to mention her riding a scooter to work. She quickly switched expressions and laughed it off. "Oh, I was just about to buy a new car. The scooter's only temporary, just to get by for now." Once all the food was served, the classmates started eating and drinking, with Amanda working to liven up the atmosphere. I've always been more reserved, so I just smiled along and didn't say much. Mike, usually full of hot air, quietly pushed his food around on his plate. I knew he was preparing for his big moment. Sure enough, after a few rounds of drinks, the reminiscing began. As soon as everyone started talking about old times, Mike finally spoke up. "We grew up together, we're brothers, after all. I've been going through a tough time lately. I haven't been able to eat or sleep, and even my favorite beer tastes bitter. Debt collectors are hounding me, calling and texting non-stop. I can't sleep at night. Could any of you help me out? I swear I'll be grateful for the rest of my life." Everyone put down their utensils and a few people took strategic sips of their drinks. We all glanced around, searching each other's eyes for a reaction. The tension was palpable. Some of us worked in government jobs, others in demanding corporate roles, but no one was in a position to easily lend money. In my past life, when I'd asked Amanda to repay the $20,000, she'd lied and told me she was living paycheck to paycheck with no savings. After I died, I learned she had over $30,000 in her account all along. She just didn't want to give it to me or anyone else. No wonder she could wave off $20,000 like it was nothing. Mike looked miserable, but no one was willing to speak up and offer money. Amanda's eyes darted around, and I knew she was about to chime in, so I decided to strike first. "Mike, I would have had $20,000 for you, but I invested it yesterday." His hopeful expression shattered in less than a second. I glanced at Amanda, who tried to smile, But don't worry, Amanda has plenty of money. She's planning to buy a $30,000 Mercedes, so she's got everything saved up. Mike's eyes lit up with hope again, but I saw the flicker of panic in Amanda's eyes. Wait, I don't have $30,000. She stammered, trying to keep up appearances. You just mentioned you were buying a new car when you walked in, I continued. Everyone here heard you, right? Don't worry. Amanda's got our backs. She can just wait a bit longer to buy the car and lend Mike the money. Amanda, realizing she was cornered, tried to stall. But I didn't bring my checkbook, and there's not that much in my bank account right now. How about this, Ashley? Why don't you? I cut her off. Oh, you can definitely transfer the money. I'll help you with it. I stood up, walked over, and took her phone from the table. Using the password I remembered from my past life, I opened her banking app. Sure enough, her savings and checking accounts were linked. Before she could react, I showed the screen to everyone at the table. Look at that, Amanda's got $30,000. It won't be a problem for her to lend you $20,000, Mike. Mike's eyes gleamed with excitement, while Amanda grabbed her phone, stumbling for excuses. I raised my glass and walked over to Mike. Mike, we all grew up together. Amanda won't leave you hanging. Go ahead and transfer the money, Amanda. I'll return it to you when my investment matures. Mike immediately stood up, downing 3 drinks in a row as a show of thanks. He hugged me, pouring out his gratitude, while Amanda reluctantly transferred the $20,000 to Mike. I patted Mike on the back, clinking glasses with the rest of the group. We're all brothers here. Don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it. Watching Amanda's face grow darker by the second as she forced herself to transfer the money was oddly satisfying. I hadn't felt this good in a long time. The food tasted better, I slept more soundly, and I even dreamed of Amanda's defeated expression. After the reunion, I went home, still buzzing with satisfaction. Amanda wasn't the only one who could use others' money to look generous. Now she knew how it felt to be taken advantage of, to be backed into a corner with no way out. In my previous life, once Amanda learned I'd bought an apartment near work, she showed up all the time, sometimes with a few friends, other times with half a dozen co-workers in tow. They'd leave my place a mess after every visit. Since I'd been commuting back to my hometown to take care of my mom, Amanda started using my place for parties when I wasn't there. She knew the door code, and I'd been too busy to change it. She even let her co-workers crash at my place, and some of them thought it was her apartment. She never bothered to correct them. This time, I sold that apartment in secret. With my $30,000 in savings, plus some help from my mom, I bought a 3-bedroom house. I moved my mom in with me, making things easier and safer for both of us. My mom suggested throwing a housewarming party for my co-workers, but I refused. Mom, co-workers aren't the same as friends, I explained. People are hard to predict. When someone close to you is doing well, jealousy often comes before congratulations. She didn't seem to believe me, thinking I was overcomplicating things. People aren't that bad, she said, brushing it off. A week later, Amanda cornered me in the break room at work. Ashley, when is that investment maturing? When are you going to give me my money back? She demanded, clearly angry. I feigned surprise. When did I ever borrow money from you? Her face turned red, and she raised her voice. At the reunion, you borrowed $20,000 to give to Mike. I smiled sweetly. Oh, you mean you lent Mike $20,000? What does that have to do with me? Amanda was speechless, her anger building. She stepped forward, trying to grab my arm, but I calmly picked up the hot water kettle. Careful, Amanda. You wouldn't want to burn yourself. I sipped my coffee and stirred it slowly. Mike borrowed the money from you, so you should take it up with him. What do you want from me? Amanda's face turned beet red, her eyes practically bulging out of her head. But she told me to lend him the money. It was your idea, she stammered. I shook my head, looking bewildered. I think you've had a little too much to drink. The money came from your account, and the recipient was Mike. Why would I be involved? Amanda was fuming, her feet stomping the ground in frustration. The more indifferent I acted, the angrier she got. She grabbed her phone, calling Mike, but his number was disconnected. She started contacting the other classmates from the reunion, trying to get someone to back her up. but most of them claimed they'd been too drunk to remember anything, or they dodged the question altogether, not wanting to get involved in a debt dispute. In fact, some of them had already suspected Mike would skip town, which was why they'd stayed quiet that night. In my past life, I was the only one clueless enough to fall for Amanda's manipulation, transferring the money without a second thought. When I tried to track down Mike afterward, everyone had given me the same excuses, leaving me sleepless and stressed for months, my hair falling out in clumps. This time, Amanda had no such luck. After exhausting all her options, she finally turned to the police, only to discover that Mike had fled and was listed as a debtor on a blacklist. The police told her she could sue, but the chances of recovering the money were slim. There was no formal agreement, and they couldn't even locate him. After all that, Amanda found herself at odds with a group of classmates, several of whom had cut ties with her. A few weeks later, she confronted me again, her eyes burning with resentment. "Ashley, is your mom's life worth less than $20,000? Don't you remember? If it weren't for me, your mom would have been in a body bag when you got to the hospital." "Oh, I almost forgot about that," I said, remembering how Amanda had gloated at my funeral after I was killed. I'd heard her whispering to my picture, fake tears in her eyes, saying, "My dumb friend thought I saved her mom's life. What a sucker. She died for nothing." I stepped closer, looking Amanda dead in the eye. "Are you sure you were the one who saved my mom?" Amanda blinked, startled, and took a step back, her confidence faltering. She tried to compose herself, her chin lifting as she regained her posture. "You saw it yourself at the hospital. The doctors said it was all thanks to the CPR. I smiled coldly. "I did hear them say that. But Amanda, it wasn't you who gave my mom SPAR, it was the delivery guy who happened to be passing by." Amanda froze, dumbfounded. That was the truth I'd only learned after my death. That day, the delivery guy had just finished a drop-off and was on his way to the next one when he saw my mom collapse right in front of him. Without a second thought, he rushed to her aid, checking her vitals and determining she needed CPR. He called 911 and described her condition clearly, taking immediate action to save her life. When the paramedics arrived, Amanda happened to be wandering by as usual. She told the delivery guy that the woman on the ground was her aunt and that he should hurry on to his next delivery. The guy wanted to stay and explain everything to the paramedics, but Amanda pressured him to leave, even threatening him with responsibility if anything went wrong. After that, the delivery guy never took any more orders in our area, worried sick about my mom's fate. Not only had Amanda taken credit for his good deed, but she'd also used it as leverage to control me ever since. And now, I was finally confronting her with the truth. Amanda stood there, her face turning pale, stumbling over her words. "Why you?" I stared at her with icy resolve. "We're co-workers, Amanda. I don't want things to get ugly, but if you ever try to hold this over me again, don't blame me if I leave you humiliated." I flashed her a plastic smile before walking away. From that day on, Amanda never dared bring up the $20,000 again. She swallowed her defeat in silence, and seeing her miserable expression every day brought me so much joy. My food tasted better, my sleep improved, and even my dreams were filled with images of her looking defeated. One day, I came home to find Amanda sitting at my dining table, eating dinner. My mom was coming out of the kitchen, balancing a bowl of salad in one hand and a plate of tuna sashimi in the other. "So, you're Ashley's co-workers, huh? Eat up. Eat up. There's not much. But please don't be shy. This fish is super fresh, I just bought it today." Confused, I shot my mom a questioning look, and Amanda, with a smug smile, chimed in, "Oh, Ashley, you moved and didn't even tell me. What a coincidence. I bumped into Mom at the mall, and she insisted I come over for dinner. How could I say no to such a kind offer? You're not upset I'm here, are you?" Amanda's overly friendly attitude always caught me off guard, especially when she sprung things on me like this. My mom, being the kind-hearted woman she was, seemed a bit disoriented by Amanda's use of mom but didn't think much of it. "Of course not. You're always welcome. Come over anytime," my mom replied warmly. I didn't want to make my mom overthink things or make her worry that I wasn't getting along with my coworkers, so I didn't push the issue. After dinner, my mom asked me to give her a ride home, but I politely declined, using the excuse that I wasn't feeling well. After Amanda left, I gently warned my mom, "You can't bring the same small-town hospitality into the city. People here are more concerned with their own interests. They're not all as nice as they seem." But my mom thought I was being too cynical. All right, she said, clearly thinking I was exaggerating. The next day at work, Amanda was passing out chocolates to our coworkers. The packaging looked familiar, and when I glanced at the bag on her desk, it hit me that was the same bag she'd taken from my house after dinner the other night. No wonder I couldn't find my Belgian chocolates when I got home. My friend had sent those to me as a birthday gift from abroad. I had assumed my mom had eaten them and didn't think much of it. But now it was clear Amanda had taken them. With her personality, it was easy to imagine what had happened. She'd probably said something to my mom like, "Wow, I love chocolates, especially imported ones. I've never had any before." My mom's simple kindness was admirable, but this world wasn't made for people like her. I could feel the heat rising within me. "Don't be shy, everyone," Amanda said sweetly. "I bought these chocolates during the last big sale and wanted to share them with you." As she looked innocently in my direction, I could barely keep from rolling my eyes. Not long after that, Amanda showed up at my house again, this time with a woman in tow. As soon as I saw her, my stomach dropped. It was Amanda's cousin, Jenna. In my previous life, Amanda had sneakily moved Jenna into my apartment while I wasn't home. Jenna had given birth, done her postpartum recovery, and practically turned my place into a nursery before I even found out. By the time I realized what was going on, my apartment was trashed, and there was a heavily pregnant woman living in it. As the saying goes, you can lend someone a space for death, but never for childbirth. I couldn't exactly kick out a pregnant woman, so I tried calling the police, but Jenna begged me not to. She told me Amanda had let her stay there. I had no choice but to call Amanda. "I figured your apartment was empty," Amanda had explained, brushing off my anger. "My cousin and her husband are having a baby out of wedlock. They don't have a place to stay. Once they save up for a down payment, they'll move out." Jenna, with tears streaming down her face, added, "My parents disapprove of the marriage, but once the baby is born, they'll soften up. My husband and I are both working hard to prove ourselves." Her logic was full of holes, but I didn't have the energy to argue. I finally said, "No, this apartment was brand new when I bought it, and now look at it. There's garbage everywhere. And what's that smell in the corner?" Jenna awkwardly muttered, "Oh, that's my husband. He had a bit too much to drink the other night and couldn't make it to the bathroom." I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. "Your husband couldn't take out the trash on his way out? The hallway is full of it." Despite how absurd the situation was, Amanda had played the sympathy card, begging me with puppy dog eyes. She even pretended to scold Jenna, telling her to clean up and be grateful for my generosity. At the time, I thought Amanda had saved my mom's life, so I relented and let Jenna stay. That decision had spiraled out of control. Jenna didn't just have one child, she had a second while living in my apartment. By the time I asked her to pay rent or cover the damage to the floors and walls, she acted like she was doing me a favor. "This apartment doesn't even belong to you," she had said. "Your cousin lent it to me. You should take it up with her." It wasn't until I threatened to take legal action that Jenna's family finally moved out. Afterward, Amanda had spread nasty rumors about me, claiming my apartment was full of lingerie and that I was hiding something scandalous, which was why I didn't want anyone staying there. This time, I had sold the apartment in advance. Amanda, seeing my mom as easier to manipulate than me, had come to set her trap. "So, Ashley, did you sell that apartment of yours?" Amanda asked casually, taking a bite of food. "Yup, sold it a while back. That's how I had the money to buy this house," I replied nonchalantly. Jenna exchanged a glance with Amanda, thinking I didn't notice. Amanda kept probing. "This house is really spacious, and it's beautifully decorated. But don't you think it's a bit lonely with just the two of you? I noticed there's an extra room that's empty." My mom, oblivious to Amanda's ulterior motives, happily offered Jenna more fish. I made extra sashimi because I remember how much Amanda loved it last time. I immediately stopped her. Mom, pregnant women shouldn't eat raw fish. Everyone at the table looked confused. Jenna, her voice wavering, asked, "How did you know I was pregnant?" I raised an eyebrow and pointed at Amanda. "Your cousin told me." Amanda, caught off guard, stammered. "When did I say that?" "I never." "Yes, you did. At the last reunion, you said your cousin was pregnant. You must have had a little too much to drink and forgot." Jenna's face flushed with embarrassment, and Amanda's expression darkened. My mom, sensing something was off, grew more uncomfortable. I continued, "You really should have told my mom about Jenna's pregnancy. It's not right to invite yourself over for dinner when you're pregnant without letting her know. If anything goes wrong, who'll be responsible?" Mom and I would never hear the end of it. I glanced at my mom, whose eyes flashed with determination. I knew she was a kind woman, but she wouldn't let anyone take advantage of her. She always tried to see the best in people, but once she sensed something was off, she turned into a fierce protector. My mom set down her chopsticks, her face no longer warm and welcoming. She looked at Amanda and Jenna coldly. "You can lend a place for death, but never for childbirth. With a baby on the way, this house is too small for people. It just wouldn't be right." Amanda, visibly taken aback, was at a loss for words. Jenna, who had been on the verge of tears, didn't even have time to start her usual routine. "Jenna, you're not showing too much yet, so you could still find a cheap place to rent. If you wait until you're further along, landlords might not want to rent to you." I turned to Amanda with an innocent smile. "Amanda, you still have over $10,000 in your account, right? It should be more than enough to help Jenna find a place to stay. After all, you generously gave $20,000 to help a friend in need. You wouldn't abandon family, would you?" Amanda's face contorted with a mix of emotions, but Jenna was too excited about the idea of a new place to notice. She thought Amanda was really going to take care of everything for her, blissfully unaware of the truth. Amanda, on the other hand, had assumed my house was hers to control. Now, she was left scrambling for excuses. Swallowing her frustration, she bit her tongue. As I took a bite of fish, I savored the satisfaction. Watching Amanda's expression was priceless. Jenna ended up finding a rental, but Amanda's savings were nearly depleted. At work, she couldn't even look at me without scowling, and sometimes she'd accidentally bump into me. She had a mountain of resentment, but no outlet for it. On my birthday, I had planned a quiet dinner with my mom, but when we arrived at the restaurant, I saw Amanda and a group of co-workers. I knew Amanda had overheard me talking to my mom on the phone and had planned this little surprise to get under my skin. She even brought a tiny 4-inch cake, barely enough for one person, let alone a group of 10. In my past life, I had fallen into her trap, thinking it was a gathering to celebrate my birthday. But in the end, it turned into a nightmare that cost me almost $3,000. This time, as soon as I saw them, I feigned surprise. "What are you all doing here? Is this a team dinner?" I didn't get the memo. Amanda emerged from behind the group, holding the little cake with 3 candles stuck in it. "Ashley, it's your birthday today, right? We planned this as a surprise. We're celebrating with you." I smiled, shaking my head. "Today's not my birthday." She blinked in confusion. "What do you mean? Your file says your birthday is today." "Oh, that's my lunar birthday. My real birthday changes every year. It's not today." The awkward silence was palpable as the co-workers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Amanda's face fell. "Well, since we're all here, why don't we just celebrate anyway?" I wiped my mouth and stood up. "My mom and I have already finished dinner, and we're heading to a movie. But since everyone's here, why don't you all enjoy the meal? The steaks here are fantastic, and the wine is even better." My co-workers looked at each other, unsure of what to say. This restaurant wasn't outrageously expensive, but no one was keen on footing the bill for a casual work dinner. It was the kind of place you'd go for a romantic date or a special family meal, not a work outing. As I gestured to my mom, she caught on to my cue and stood up. As we passed Amanda, my mom spoke loudly and clearly. Amanda, dear, please stop coming over for dinner. It's just not convenient. As I left, I noticed a few of my coworkers glaring at Amanda with annoyance. Without me there to pick up the tab, they were left to awkwardly order the cheapest items on the menu and leave soon after. Amanda's plan to ruin my birthday had backfired spectacularly. Instead of costing me money, it had only earned her a bad reputation. The next day, I arrived at work to find that a new accountant had been transferred from headquarters. When I saw him walk in, holding his back gingerly, I felt my blood run cold. It was Chloe, 6 months pregnant. In my previous life, it was her husband, Brian, who had killed me. I've never been one for small talk, so I just gave her a nod of acknowledgement. But Amanda, having lost me as her personal doormat, immediately jumped in to help Chloe with her things, introducing her to everyone and explaining how the company worked. Before long, they were close. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. At lunch in the cafeteria, even from across the room, I could hear Amanda gossiping to Chloe about her cousin. I have this cousin, got pregnant out of wedlock, and neither she nor her husband has any ambition. They're lazy and unmotivated. If it weren't for me giving them a place to stay, that poor baby would be growing up on the streets. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. Just wait until your cousin and her husband trash that apartment of yours. Then we'll see how generous you feel. Chloe's belly was getting bigger by the day, and her husband, Brian, would frequently bring her food and drive her to and from work. Clearly, this child meant the world to them. Rumor had it that they had gone through years of IVF treatments before finally getting pregnant, so Chloe was understandably cautious. She was meticulous about her diet, refusing anything that might harm the baby. One day, Amanda finally saw her opportunity. After work, Chloe was standing outside the office, talking on the phone. "What? Is Mom okay? Take her to the hospital right away. I'll just take the subway home. Don't worry about me." She hung up, looking distressed. Amanda, as if appearing out of thin air, floated over. "What happened? Is everything okay? My mother-in-law has high blood pressure. She had to be rushed to the hospital," Chloe explained. "I'll just take the subway home." "Oh no! No, no!" Amanda gasped dramatically, as if the very idea of a pregnant woman on the subway was an unforgivable sin. "You can't take the subway, especially not during rush hour. What if you get bumped or knocked over?" Amanda's eyes darted around until she spotted me walking toward the parking lot. Without hesitation, she grabbed my arm. "Ashley, you should drive Chloe home. Your car is so big and roomy, it's much better than letting a pregnant woman take the subway alone." I blinked, completely taken aback. Before I could respond, Amanda started shouting loud enough for everyone around to hear, causing people to turn and look at us. "Even if you're not close, she's still a coworker. How could you let a pregnant woman take the subway in her condition? Come on, be a decent person." Not giving me a chance to escape, Amanda added, "Don't worry, I'll come along too so it won't be awkward between the two of you. After all, what's the point of owning such a big car if you're not going to use it to help others?" I took a deep breath, pretending to size up Chloe's belly. Amanda's eyes gleamed with victory, sure that I had no way out this time. But I smiled and raised my voice a little, addressing Chloe. "Chloe, I'm really sorry, but I'm not a great driver. See that dent on the bumper? I got into a fender bender just the other day." Amanda's face twisted in frustration. "But that's what? What do you mean?" I asked innocently, grabbing Amanda's hand. "Amanda, you're always so thoughtful. Why don't you take Chloe home on your scooter? It's small and convenient." Chloe, looking a bit flustered, chimed in. "Yeah, Amanda, since you're so eager to help, wouldn't it be safer if you did it yourself?" Smiling, I pretended to answer a phone call and walked away. I knew Amanda had scratched my car on purpose, but she'd never admit it, and she certainly didn't have the money to pay for the damage. This was the perfect way to use the situation to my advantage. Half an hour after I got home, the company group chat exploded with messages. Amanda and Chloe had been in an accident. Both of them had been rushed to the hospital, and their scooter had been completely totaled. Scrolling through my feed, I read the details. Amanda had run a red light. How could anyone be so reckless? Someone wrote, Running a red light with a pregnant woman on board? What was she thinking? I read a few more comments before closing my phone, suddenly feeling exhausted. It was as if I had crossed some invisible finish line. I turned off my phone and quickly fell asleep. The next day, I joined my coworkers in visiting Amanda and Chloe at the hospital. I carried a fruit basket and feigned concern, but inside, I felt nothing. In my past life, Chloe had miscarried, and instead of being grateful for my help, she had conspired with Amanda to pin the entire blame on me. They claimed I had been the one driving the car, making me legally responsible for the accident. Her husband Brian had used that to extort a large sum of money from me and then threaten my mom, causing her to suffer a heart attack. In the end, it was Brian who killed me, running me over with a steamroller. Chloe had not only lost a baby, but the hemorrhaging that followed led to the removal of her uterus. The precious IVF baby they had longed for was gone, and there would never be another. This time, things played out differently. Co-workers who had witnessed the accident confirmed that it was Amanda who insisted on taking Chloe home. Brian stormed into Amanda's hospital room, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her to the floor. She tried to defend herself, screaming, "It's not my fault your wife wasn't picked up." "What does that have to do with me?" That only enraged Brian further. "My mom was hospitalized for high blood pressure, and now she's dead because of you," he shouted. "Everyone knows you don't run a red light, especially with a pregnant woman on the back of your scooter. What were you thinking?" Brian was out of control. He beat Amanda so savagely that the nurses and doctors had to intervene, but even they struggled to hold him back. With wild eyes, he tore out clumps of Amanda's hair, punching and kicking her. In the chaos, he managed to bite her ear, tearing it off. Blood splattered everywhere as Amanda screamed in agony. Finally, Brian grabbed a pen from a doctor's pocket and stabbed Amanda in the neck before being dragged away by police. Amanda survived, but her ear was barely reattached, and she would have trouble speaking clearly for the rest of her life. Large sections of her scalp were permanently bald from where her hair had been ripped out. In the days that followed, she cried constantly, unable to comprehend how everything had gone so wrong. Brian was arrested for assault, and Amanda was charged with traffic violations. I visited her one last time, bringing a fruit basket filled with grapes and lemons. I sat by her bedside, dabbing the tears from her eyes, offering empty words of comfort. As I stood to leave, Amanda struggled to speak, trying to say something. Before I walked out, I leaned in close and whispered softly in her ear, "Get well soon, Amanda. You've still got a prison sentence to serve, so don't give up just yet." She tried to scream, but no sound came out, her throat constricting with effort. The harder she tried, the more she choked on her own frustration. Smiling, I turned and walked away without looking back, leaving that mess of a situation behind me for good. I didn't like the company, so I quit. When I choose a company, I look at three things. First, the work schedule. Second, the pay. And third, the work environment and relationships. I was dissatisfied with all three, so I decided to leave. I found a smaller company, closer to home. Although it was still in the early stages of growth and the salary wasn't as impressive as at the big firm, it was enough for me. If a job offers at least one reason to stay, that's good enough. If it gives me two, even better. In my second month at the new job, something happened on what seemed like just another ordinary day. After work, I was driving home when I noticed an elderly man wandering the streets. Cars whizzed past him, and he looked so fragile, so vulnerable. I turned on my hazard lights and pulled over. I rushed to him. He was a lost Alzheimer's patient, wearing a name tag around his neck with a phone number. I dialed the number, and within 15 minutes, a food delivery guy arrived, his face full of worry and relief. "Thank God!" he exclaimed, pressing his hands together in gratitude. "Thank you so much. You found my mom." He couldn't stop thanking me and even offered to compensate me, but I politely declined. As I watched him hold his mother close, something about him seemed familiar. I gave him a small smile, thinking back to the day I'd raced to the hospital when I heard my mom had collapsed. The setting sun bathed his face in golden light, and I couldn't help but feel its warmth wash over me too. The end.